Hello, I'm Margaret Fire Robin. I serve on Bristol, Tennessee City Council, currently serving as mayor, and want to welcome everybody to our called meeting this Thursday, April 9th, 2020. Our city council has had quite a few called meetings to get updates during this COVID crisis. So we really appreciate our staff for helping that to happen. And we appreciate our guests who come and give us updates. So we want to welcome everybody else who has joined us. And today's updates, we're going to include an update from our Sullivan County Health Department. Also, we're really glad to have Frontier Health here to give us an update, as we know that mental health is always critical, and particularly during times of crisis, for what our services and how we respond to folks. We also will have one item of business, and then we will spend some time figuring out our way forward for the called meetings for getting more information. So appreciate the council and our staff and everybody else. And with that, I think we'll start with a roll call.
Oh, and Vince is coming on now.
I'm here.
So,
Good.
do we have a roll call, Miss? Oh, there's Sarah. Sorry.
Fire Robin,
Yes, here.
King,
Here.
Powers,
Here.
Luttrell,
Here.
and Turner.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Sora, I think you could introduce the staff that are with us and mention our guests that we'll give attention to going forward.
Yes, Mayor, be glad to. We have City Attorney Danielle Smith with us, our Parks and Recreation Director Terry Napier, Director of Development Services Tim Beavers, Director of Community Relations John Luttrell, City Recorder and Finance Director Tara Music. We also have, as guests this morning, we have the Director of Sullivan County Regional Health Department, Gary Mays. We have the Chief Medical Officer with Sullivan County Regional Health Department, Dr. Stephen May. And then we have the Director of Frontier Health, Christy Hammonds, with us to brief council on their respective roles in the community.
Thank you very much. And again, we thank folks for being here and welcome our non-regular folks. Next on our agenda, with at this time, every time we're doing an electronic meeting, we have to have a discussion of necessity to acknowledge that at this given time, it is critical that we have electronic meetings rather than in-person meetings. So I think Ms. Smith, do you want to go over that as usual, or do you want us just to all agree that it's a necessity?
I think if you all agree that it's a necessity, we've covered the reason for it several times now, unless you want me to cover it again.
I think we'll save that for our next official meeting. So,
Okay.
Council, everybody agrees that we need to have this meeting electronically. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. All right, so the first thing is an update from our Sullivan County Regional Health Department, and Dr. May and Director Gary Mays have been introduced. So if y'all want to go ahead, and again, we talked a little bit before we went on air how much we appreciate your leadership with this. So take it.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to appear with you this morning and the Bristol Council. And I just want to emphatically say that we're very thankful for the leadership of the City of Bristol during this crisis. City staff and leadership have been fantastic to work with, and we just could not be more proud of our City of Bristol and everything that we've done together. We continue to operate our call lines from the citizens of Bristol and Sullivan County and Kingsport. We staff those with nurses, and we receive several hundred calls a week. Those calls vary in terms of questions about the disease, about testing, about symptoms. We also have a person designated working with our businesses in Bristol and Kingsport and Sullivan County, reviewing the public health order and walking them through the decision of essential and non-essential. And we continue to take concerns from citizens about businesses and or social gatherings that we learn of. These calls give us good intel, if you will, about what citizens are concerned about and concerns about the disease. We continue to offer testing, and Dr. May is going to brief you on that and give you an update on the disease status. We at the health department do not foresee in at least in the next few days a lifting of the order or changing our course of direction. I'll let Doc explain, but we believe that this is having a positive impact on our numbers in Sullivan County, and we could not again be more satisfied with the response from our citizens countywide and our businesses that have stepped up and made a huge sacrifice for the public and public safety and public health. And without further ado, I'll let Dr. May give you an update, and then Mayor, if you want us to, we'll be available for a few questions.
Thank you. Dr. May.
Okay, just to give you a quick situational update, looking at first at some numbers across the state, there's 4,362 cases, 79 deaths, 449 hospitalizations. Tennessee's death rate is currently at 1.8%. The United States overall death rate, though, is at 3.4%. When we look at the projection models on when we anticipate to peak in Tennessee, that is predicted for 4/17. And when we look at those projections, we're looking at being well below our capacity to deal with this. So what this tells us is that social distancing and stay-at-home orders are working. Currently in Sullivan County, we have 30 cases, 1 death, 2 hospitalizations, 16 have recovered. In looking at the progression of this disease unchecked, you should look for a doubling every 3 days. We are not seeing that, which tells us this social distancing is working. When we look at the distancing score for Sullivan County, we're still at about a C-, but much better than the D that we were last week. And so with that, the measures are really making a difference, and I think preserving our healthcare system and preventing an overwhelming surge into our healthcare facilities.
Okay, thank you. Gary, do you have anything to add with what he just offered?
The probably phase that's folded into operations along with Emergency Management Agency in Sullivan County is PPE management for our first responders, especially for police, fire, and EMS and other essential type services. And we have systems built in place for the EMS, particularly because they will be picking up and are picking up possible COVID victims and COVID victims. And so management of PPE is a top priority, and working closely with Emergency Management Agency. Certainly no chief carrier is as well. So we're keeping our eye on the PPE situation to make sure first responders are safe. Dr. May is working directly and daily with the chiefs and directors and those agencies and working with them in case they have workers that are exposed, trying to expedite a test for the labs so those workers can return to work and or isolate as appropriate. And pretty much that is obviously important for us to sustain continuity of government. And so far we've been able to manage this very well. Again, as Dr. May said very well, and we shouldn't overlook, the social distancing is appearing to give us flattening of the numbers much better than we thought we would be 2 weeks ago. and we're internally we're optimistic, cautiously optimistic, but so far so good.
People are going to ask you questions in a second, but I'll start with, can you talk a little bit about testing? And I know that Ballot is doing more of that, but can you share where that is happening? Is that still going through the Nurse Connect number to get a number to be tested, where the sites are, et cetera?
Yes, we continue to test, of course, and we continue to screen test. That process really has not changed a great deal in the last 3 weeks. We are working with the state of Tennessee. Tennessee is working with folks at the federal level to really bolster our testing capacity in the state, of course, in Sullivan County. We hope that we will be in a better position in a few weeks. And we are working on that. I know the Tennessee Department of Health is working on that as we talk vigorously. And so we hope to really ramp up our testing. Testing is going to be really important moving forward, of course, because we've got to get our arms around and understand the disease and how much it's penetrated in the county. The only way to do that is testing. And so we're not there yet in Sullivan County. We will get there. It is certainly important at the Tennessee Department of Health level to do that. And as soon as we get the materials and the capacity in place, we will release the information to the citizens and the public, and of course, with our local government leaders. And I would imagine that would happen rapidly. So we look forward to that day, actually, when we can have effective testing. Dr. May, do you have anything to add to that?
Right, and the testing sites remain the same, Indian Path and through Bristol Regional. Sullivan County Regional Health Department is also able to test through Blumpville and Kingsport sites, but all sites are doing pre-screening and arranging for you to come in to get that test done. Our phone number is available to the public, 423-279-2777, and we're available to answer, first of all, any questions, and then if needed, we will do that screening and then hopefully be able to set them up for their test through the Tennessee Department of Health. If you plan to get it through Ballad, you'll have to call through their Ballad screening lines.
Okay, thank you very much. And just what's the turnaround time? Has that changed any, or is it still about the same?
All right, Tennessee Department of Health is turning it around in about 24 hours after receipt of the test. So you have to factor in getting the test down in a reasonable time. Quest is still 5 to 7 days. Ballad is running at about 3 to 5 days. AEL usually is 2 to 3 days, looking at turnaround times for those specific labs.
Thanks very much. And we know as we get through this and start looking at going back the other direction and gradually changing some of our social distancing, et cetera, that the testing will be even more critical to be sure that we're staying on top of things. So appreciate that. Council, do y'all have questions?
I do. Yeah, I have one for Gary. Go ahead, Vince.
No,
okay.
mine was that on the, did I hear correctly that we had 2 hospitalizations in Sullivan County is what we've got now? Because I'd heard, I guess all of Ballad had 13 hospitalizations. So we have 2 in Sullivan County. Is that correct?
That is correct. When we look at the Ballad numbers, Ballad announced yesterday that they had, I'm trying to find that number here in my notes. Ballad has overall 96 cases in their entire system. 2 of those cases are currently in the hospital in Sullivan County.
Okay. And then I know Ballad had talked of the turnaround time of within an hour or 2. Do you have any idea of when that's going to be in place on the testing?
a lot of that's got to do with the type of test that they're performing. The Genesis test, they got 100 test cartridges in to run it with that. They can run that in 3 to 6 hours on the machine. However, they've run out of cartridges for that particular machine, had to go back to the other PCR test, which takes longer to run.
Okay.
Okay, Malin?
Gary, with regards to the PPE, it said the current run rate that's been, inventory's been used up. What would you estimate we have on hand currently, providing or saying we did not receive any additional material in?
Yeah, it's a good question. And that varies from service to service. We have 10 volunteer fire departments in Sullivan County, of course, the 2 cities, and then we have Sullivan County EMS. Mike, Chief Carrier, I'm sure knows that number for the fire department. Sullivan County EMS currently has 11 days of PPE if we receive no shipments and 100% used our burn on every patient, our burn rate for every patient. However, there are mechanisms coming online. Ballard has been very gracious for first responders to re-sterilize PPE. We're obviously going to take advantage of that. And Jim Bean, our EMA director, is aggressively securing PPE for the first responders in all of Sullivan County, including Kingsport and Bristol. And so it's a number we measure. It's a number we will continuously look at. Today, the situation is manageable, but however, I redundantly go back to the point of our numbers and our cases are not growing exponentially. And again, attribute that to the aggressiveness of our business, our leaders, and our community in the shutdown, if you will. So that again offloads a lot of pressure on PPE, but it's certainly something we are looking at hourly in the county. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
All right, Lee Powers, I think you were wanting
I had a question. Dr. Mays, Gary, as we move forward, the declarations and working stay-at-home declarations, is it your thought that you will follow the government when the governor when he lifts the statewide restrictions, or are you going to chart a separate course for that?
Well, that's a great question, and I will say that we will chart our direction based on the disease and how we understand the health of our community, and also with our local elected leaders, the mayoral group that we work with, Bill Sora and Chris McCarty in Kingsport, and Mayor Venable. We made that decision without necessarily state and federal. We did it in the best interest of the people of Bristol and Kingsport and Sullivan County. And that will continue to drive those decisions. It's what's best for our community. And I think that is our safest approach. Now, obviously, I'm under the impression from last night's task force meeting that the CDC will be releasing revised social distancing guidelines, a little more conducive to work environment. And we look forward to seeing those guidelines. And so the basic answer is we will let the disease and what is the best interest of public health drive our local decisions. And I think we have to be careful, in how we navigate that. And we need to learn more. And there is more and more data coming in. We're not in the same position we were 2 weeks ago, or even 4 weeks ago, of course. So great question.
And then for Dr. Mays, if you would please go through those numbers again, the total number of cases tested, recovered, and deaths.
Okay, we have a total of 30 cases right now in Sullivan County. That doesn't quite match what's on the state because there's a lag of 24 hours on the state website. Right. We've had 1 death, 2 hospitalizations, and 16 recovered.
And then how many total have been tested?
I don't have that number right in front of me. I know it's probably around 225 to 250.
Okay. Thank you so much. And we appreciate all that you're doing. You and Gary both. Your leadership has been just very valuable to all of us, and we thank you for it.
Oh, thank you.
One thing that I would, Dr. May, on the numbers we were talking about, the 93 that's within ballot, but those are not hospitalizations, correct? I mean, of what we've got as far as that are hospitalizations is not the 93 number, correct?
That is the number they've had in the hospital is 96 cases.
Okay. That have been hospitalized?
That is correct.
Okay. I just wanted to verify that. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Again, we thank y'all very much. Before this meeting started, I heard the most recent modeling is cautiously optimistic for when our peaks may happen as a country, and looking at it. And we have noted that, and I think Dr. May, you just said, we're getting more and more data. It's data on how the disease is progressing. Also, just understanding who's most affected and how that plays out, how the disease plays out, etc. Some of that's becoming more obvious and helps us with understanding and planning moving forward. So we will look to you all to keep track of a lot of that and to be sure that the information we have aligns with what y'all have as well. So, and appreciate this opportunity for the public to get an update from our health department. Also, I'll just remind those who may join us as well as, and we've reminded us on council that Sullivan County Health Department is a metro council, which serves the county, the whole Sullivan County, whereas the rest of our Northeast Tennessee, 8 counties, the rest of them, 7 of them, are served under Northeast Tennessee Health Department, which operates under the state health department. So we are a little bit different. It means that we can get a fair amount of attention from our health department officials that we really appreciate very, very much being in that situation. Is that correct? Gary and Dr. May, for characterizing what the situation is with our health departments.
You're correct, Mayor. Thank you.
So, okay, if there are no other questions, we will thank you, and we know that y'all can stick around for Frontier Health, or if y'all need to move on, we understand that as well. So,
well, we actually have another call in progress. I would like to hear Christy's update, so I will circle back and catch up on that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. So, all right, I'll move on to the next agenda item and go ahead and welcome Chrissy Hammonds, who's CEO and President of Frontier Health, who received an invitation yesterday to be here. So we appreciate short notice, and we all individually and as a council have acknowledged and talked a little bit about mental health during this mental health in general, but particularly during this time. So if you would want to give us an update, and then we'll see if we have questions for you.
Sure. Thank you. And I appreciate the invite as well. Very nice to meet all of you virtually. Hopefully we'll be able to meet you in person in the very near future. So just to kind of give you a little bit of an update as far as where Frontier Health is in all of this, is about 2 weeks ago, we shifted our service delivery to a virtual model. And our clinicians did a fantabulous job. That's not a word, but as far as being able to really, being able to really shift that on a dime. So literally within about 48 hours, we were able to really contact existing individuals that had services with us and move really to both a telephonic and a telehealth model. And both the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse as well as TennCare opened that up to us to be able to serve individuals in both ways. And a lot of that is a really good thing because most of the individuals we serve have limited minutes on their phones. They have limited data. And so being able to have a 30-minute to 45-minute session with a therapist via Zoom is just not, realistic in our current world. Although we hope with some additional funding and, in the near future that maybe that could shift or change. So really all of our services are currently in operation. We did make one change this week to where our outpatient services will be open Monday through Thursday from 8 to 5. That is primarily due to the shift in volume that we've seen currently. Although that doesn't impact our crisis services, that doesn't impact our walk-in center in Johnson City. So all of those particular services are still 24/7. So if somebody were to call Bristol Regional Counseling Center on Friday, they will get to our crisis triage and we will take care of their needs. So just making sure that you guys kind of understand that. And pretty much since we've shifted to virtual, we've had less than 100 people walk through our doors from a public perspective. So we've really been able to move that to that virtual model. I will also say that on our website, we've tried to make it really easy for folks. We actually have a link now to Zoom, which is the telehealth particular software that we're using. So they basically can go there and they can click in to go virtual into their Zoom session with their therapist or their physician that they're seeing. I will also say from a Bristol perspective, we've been involved with the Homeless Coalition that's currently meeting several times a week virtually. I think there's a meeting today as well. Just trying to talk about those particular needs, especially as it relates to mental health and substance abuse. I can say we've seen a shift a little bit from a substance abuse perspective. Most people are holding back on seeking help for substance abuse currently. We have seen just the continual need for crisis services and those needs, but really from a substance abuse perspective, those numbers have decreased over the last 2 weeks. It is our anticipation, though, that once some of the safer at home orders lift a little bit, that we will see an uptick and a surge in folks needing help, whether or not that just be for anxiety, whether or not that be because they lost their job through this particular transition. And so we want to be ready and able to meet that need. So, our main goal is to try and continue to serve through this and continue to maintain our employees through this as well. So that way, when we do have that surge, we'll have the supply to meet that demand from an employee perspective.
Okay.
Other questions or thoughts around that?
Council, questions? Could you say again what the Monday through Thursday hours, and that's for virtual hours, or that's still on site?
So our clinicians currently are still coming into the office Monday through Thursday. Although we're calling folks ahead of time that schedule appointments and we're making that a virtual session. Okay. So we still may see some folks walk through our door. We do have Genoa Pharmacy that's at our Bristol location, and they will continue to be open even on Fridays, but they're doing a curbside service. So people really don't enter into the building. They actually will bring that pharmacy med out to them. So again, and if somebody were to call Bristol on Friday, we route that to crisis triage and we'll make sure that we take care of that need. So if it's an issue related to medication on a Friday or they have an urgent need, we're going to make sure we take care of them on Friday, even though from an office perspective, our staff won't be there.
Gotcha.
Christy, regarding...
Go ahead, Malin. No.
Go ahead. Okay.
Go ahead.
Regarding the homeless, Christy, what would you say the estimated numbers are today? I know it's going to fluctuate up and down, but what would you estimate we have in the area now?
You know, I probably don't have a really good grasp as far as total numbers. I know I know Bristol in general has seen some challenges just in relation to some folks being out that looked like they were sick and different things like that, as far as just trying to figure out how to navigate that, as well as from just trying to take care of those individuals that may get sick and are homeless and don't have a place to go. I don't have the specific numbers, though. I would anticipate with the economic turn that we would see that change in the future as well, as far as the homeless population growing, as well as mental health and substance abuse needs.
Yeah, there are folks who have a better idea, but it's really difficult. Our point in time, that the last I heard, we did not have a final number for that. I mean, we know what we turned in, but then they do calculations or whatever. It was down some from last year. Last year, Bristol's was one of the highest in the area, just over 100, I think. And I think this year it was under 100. But again, that's really not to look at annually. It's more looking at trends, because it's difficult to get an accurate account. So anyway, but Malin, so that doesn't answer your question. It's difficult.
Well, I know most of us typically tend to just think of the folks we see downtown, but this is broader than just that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the point in time, it just counts. It does not count people who are couch surfing, people who are living in their cars. Our school systems have a better idea of some of the folks who are going through those. And even with that, a lot of people will not disclose that they are homeless because they are afraid of how that may affect their ability to legally parent their children.
Sure.
So there's just a lot of factors that are included with getting your arms around the homeless situation completely. And I imagine, as Christy spoke, with the economic downturn, there'll be more people who are staying with relatives and couch surfing and doing some things rather than reporting themselves as being homeless. So that will be, as a community, need to be on a lookout for how to serve those folks. So Lee.
Yeah, my only thought was, and I've sort of alluded to this before, is that, you know, while we are in this situation, Christy, I know everybody's just trying to maintain and move forward with the issue at hand, but are y'all keeping a log of potential opportunities that you could embrace coming out of this to more greatly address the concerns of the mental health and those with substance abuse? It's good to hear that perhaps substance abuse is down at the moment. Is there a plan, you know, just as we're going to talk about moving the economy, opening it back up and moving it forward, when this all happens, what is our opportunity to address this in a more positive way?
Well, that's a great question. One of the things that I think we've seen, if you want to look at a positive from this, is the opening of being able to use technology to be able to serve folks. So one thing that we have seen by being able to reach folks telephonically or via Zoom, instead of them having to come to us, you know, there are a lot of folks that are willing to have a conversation with you from their home. And we've been able to engage some folks that have scheduled 3 and 4 appointments with us, but have canceled and not made it to those appointments, but yet they were willing to have that conversation with us via telephone. So I think we're going to see some opportunities to engage folks a little differently, which will help us from that percentage of folks, you know, just turning away versus, you know, planting that seed. So we're really excited about that from the opportunity. And I think as TennCare and the department see some of those success stories out of that, that will shift and open up the funding streams to allow us to do some of those things. So we're really encouraged by that.
We always have to look for those opportunities.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're
And I
welcome.
guess we also need to remember that some of those opportunities that present themselves are more complicated, like for payment for services, et cetera. So we could, sometimes folks can determine what looks best, works best, but it has to be followed or led by policy changes as well. So appreciating that part of it too. That helps us know about conversations with our legislators from our community city standpoint as well. Other questions? We appreciate anything else you'd like to add for us to be aware of or know of, or
Just feel free to reach out to me. I know if you wouldn't care to share my contact information with folks, if there's a need or if you see something going on that you feel like that we could help or address, please by all means reach out. If we don't know, we can't fix it. The other thing is just let folks know that we are available and we are open. We did a press release about a week and a half ago just to let folks know that we are still here serving. But I think there were some organizations that thought that the only service that was available was crisis services. So if you can just kind of share that information and get the word out for that as well.
Okay, thank you. And of course, this is being recorded, streamed and recorded. So we encourage folks who are watching to spread that information that Frontier Health is serving our communities the same way that they are in the same ways in different approach as they have been. Also, I'll thank you for the folks. We have a homeless coalition working on stuff in Bristol. Then we have a little broader group that's trying to look at how needs are being met with food and different services, and that group asked for protocol from Frontier Health and Highlands Community Services. We received that. I think I shared it with our council. It was an excellent one-page document that helped us understand how those crisis services respond and when it's appropriate, et cetera. So that we know that lots of our public safety and folks have that, but perhaps some other folks didn't. So really appreciate sharing that document and having it very clear. So appreciate that participation. So
Thank you.
okay. If there's no other questions.
I have one quick question for you, Margaret. Do you plan on sharing the response of these crisis services with us today? Like it's in regard to like food distribution or housing?
Yes. So that group is meeting one time a week, and I did send notes to council from last week, and I will include those again. And what we're doing on trying to keep that updated is to put new information in red, and the old information gets turned to black and updated if there's major updates.
But would you like to share just some of the general points at some point today so that the public will know through the streaming as to what those services, how it's being responded?
Sure, I can do that. Right. When we get to the end. I might need to pull my notes out. So anyway, okay. If that's it, we thank you very, very much for everything. We also appreciate your workers are at Frontier are frontline workers. Even with doing the telemedicine, sometimes they're still having contacts and with going into their offices, et cetera. So we appreciate, and definitely your crisis team who responds to emergencies. So we appreciate them, and please express our appreciation for all times with the work that they do, but particularly during this difficult time. So
I'll do that. And thank you. And I appreciate again the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all have a great day.
You too.
Alrighty. Bye.
Okay, Mr. Sora, I think we're to an item on our agenda that we were going to discuss today that Councilman Keene asked us to add to our agenda.
Yes, Mayor. From our meeting last Thursday, the issue came up about how much of the mural wall do you continue to pursue? As you may recall, at the March business meeting of City Council, Council approved contracts to do repairs to the wall, and then a contract to repaint the mural, and then a contract or a purchase item regarding a new stage to provide a music venue that was a portable stage. It was much different than the stage that currently exists there. During your meeting last Thursday, and a lot has changed obviously during the month of March, but your meeting last Thursday, there was a desire to revisit a portion of, as I understood it, a portion of the decisions made, and that was specific to the repairs to the wall. To revisit that, the contract to repair the wall was to Inland Construction in Edmonton, Virginia, and a total amount of $92,800. The question was asked if we exercised our option to terminate that contract, what would be the cost to do that? And a memorandum's included in that to provide that information that was posted on board docs, but the total amount would be $7,970. That included $1,810 for bonds, performance bonds, bid bonds that have been secured, license of $15, equipment and tools in the amount of $3,460, and then direct labor in the amount of $2,685 for a total amount of $7,970. We have, as I mentioned earlier, there are three elements to the wall painting, and we had three different staff members shepherding those projects. Tim Beavers, Director of Development Services, shepherded the project addressing the repairs to the wall in advance of the painting. John Luttrell worked with the artist to develop an agreement for repainting the wall, and then Terry Napier addressed the replacement of the stage. All three of those are on the call today to answer any specific questions you have related to this matter.
All right, questions from council?
Yeah, with regards to the repair of the wall, of the $3,460 of equipment and tools, are those items that we could use somewhere in the city ourselves in any projects that our construction crews could be?
I'm gonna let Tim has spoken directly with Inland Construction, so I'll let Tim answer that question.
For Inland, there's specialty grinding tools that's for removing the mortar that have some dust control, OSHA compliant dust control on those tools. Certainly we could get them from Inland, but I don't know that we'd have much of use for them in the city. We don't do a lot of repointing of walls and grinding like that. So.
Yeah, I didn't know if it's something we could use in the city or the school maintenance programs or.
Yeah, or the library. We have some maintenance for library, but it may be different kind of masonry work. Tim, is there any possibility? I know there's a few areas of that wall that are in horrible shape. So is it possible that a couple of the areas could be worked on by our staff, understanding that they're not going to do a professional job, but to try to repair a few of the worst parts of the exterior that's going to be painted? I know a lot of the work that was going to be done was going to shear up the whole thing, but
I'm sure there are areas that we have employees that are capable of doing that type of work. It won't be the same as a masonry type employees, but they are very talented employees. So if there are certain areas that we want to look at working on, we could identify those and try our best to do a good job on them.
I think that could be helpful and help to, if we're going to choose not to repair the wall, that we try to do things to help the painting stay there as long as possible. So, other question?
Danielle, Margaret has used the term horrible condition, and that's now in the public domain. And we've also heard that the wall is in need of repair. What is our liability should there be any incidents caused to the condition of the wall?
I respect the mayor using the term horrible condition, but the mayor is not a structural engineer. And so
Right.
that's probably a question that needs to be left for another day. In case there is actually any problem with the wall, we can address that at that point.
And I could clarify that that's visually some of
Right.
the-
I mean, there's a difference between visual problems and actual structural problems that could lead to liability for the city.
Have we had a structural engineer to look at this?
That's a question for Mr. Beavers.
Yes, we had initially, and the person that developed actually the specifications for repair of the wall is a structural engineer.
And his finding was to what detail did he find that? The only reason I'm asking is, just to be sure that our exposure is parallel to what the structural engineer determined. That his determination was what exactly? Because we have this in the public domain now.
The structural engineer, as spoke last council meeting, was, or the previous one, was it's not an imminent danger of falling. Certainly the biggest issue right now is water penetration and popping of brick faces and mortar joints and further deterioration due to that water penetration. But there's no imminent danger of wall failure. I mean, the way the wall is constructed, we have not seen bricks falling out of the wall. Basically what we see is mortar popping out and some brick faces deteriorating and coming off.
So in the report from the structural engineer, he states that there is no imminent danger.
I don't know specifically his report has that in writing, but that was the conversations when we looked at it with him.
Okay.
I guess also if there was any liability or whatever, it would also go to the other owners of the wall also, if there's any liability, since we don't own the wall completely. Correct?
I think it would be best not to speculate about whose liability or where liability falls at this point, since there is no actual injury that's happened.
Right.
Your decision to repair the wall is based on a lot of factors, including the fact that there's a mural there.
Right.
It's the ownership of the wall is only one of the factors that plays into what you're deciding today, if you want to continue that project and continue that painting project.
Gotcha.
And just to clarify, the mural was painted last, how many years ago?
I think it's either the late 1990s or early 2000 in that time frame.
I think John Luttrell could answer that. I think it was 2001.
Originally painted in '86 and then repainted in 1999.
99, you got it.
Okay. 86 to 99 is 13 years. Was it just, was it completely repainted in 99, or was that just a touch-up type?
No, I believe it was just repairs to portions of the mural that were in disrepair at that time, I believe.
But the whole mural was painted at that time, again, a second time. And I believe that the artist believes that this repainting would be the last time that he would do that. And from what I understand, we could not hire somebody else to paint that mural if the artist is unavailable to paint it. Is that correct? Our attorney is nodding her head.
Yes, Mayor. This artist owns that artwork. And so if you get to the point 20 years from now where you want to put a mural there, it can't be the same mural unless he has given permission to someone to repaint that mural. And that's my understanding of how the copyright laws would work here. So you would be able to put up a different mural, but not an identical mural.
We could paint over it. We could
You
paint
could be painting over it.
Okay.
But, or we could ask the artist to give us in 20 years time, or could that be something that could be prepared, that the artist would agree that 20 years, if it could be touched up or whatever?
Right now, that's not in his contract.
Yeah.
And it would be very unlikely for him to do that, just because I think artists are reluctant to let somebody else take over their work like that.
I guess I'm still unclear. It was completely repainted 20 years ago.
John, you want to answer that? I remember it being repainted, and I'm pretty sure he redid pretty much the whole thing.
I could check my notes on that and confirm. I can't say with 100% certainty that the entire mural was redone or if there were just large portions of it. That is something I would have to check on to confirm.
And the reason I'm asking is there could be parts of the mural that is actually older than 20 years, but let's assume we're at a 20-year point. I think it's safe to assume. You know, I'm of the opinion that we should have it repainted, but I think the $93,000, $94,000 in repair work, I would like to see us eliminate that.
And I think, Chad, that's an excellent point, and I don't necessarily disagree with that at all. I think we have a bigger issue here, and that's why I asked my question the other night. I didn't get an answer. I got an opinion. My question was, has the state made known to us whether or not they were going to extend our filing of our budget for this year? And so I spoke with the state yesterday, and they said that everybody across the state, all the counties and the cities, were in the same boat right now, looking at the ongoing loss of sales tax revenue. And depending on where we are exactly with our property tax, how impactful that would be moving forward. So I see this as just one of several issues that will take us forward. We know that the school systems right now, our school system has its weighted average daily attendance hasn't dropped significantly. It was up 0.483% last year. It's down 0.374% this year. And with the sales tax situation, that will come into play. We've got a middle school that's being built. I'm not sure where we are right now in regard to its budget. So I think, while it is the responsibility of staff to put the budget together, it's our fiduciary responsibility to take a good look at that and where we are with our budget in relation to our tax rate, our sales tax receipts, and what we can look at moving forward. And I'm really glad, Chad, that you brought this up last week, because I think it's given us all an opportunity to think. And a question that I failed to ask Dr. Mays this morning is, we know what this has cost. We don't know exactly what this has cost us, but we know we're going to take a hit through our sales tax receipts on this. Without a vaccine or without some other type of preventative, we could, the doctors, the scientists, the professionals have told us we could be in for another round, perhaps not as large, but pandemic. And shutting down the economy like it's been shut down for this period of time, it has been very costly. Margaret can speak to the social services aspect of it. Bill can speak to the sales tax aspect of it. Tara can as well. So I think that we need to really take a comprehensive look and a step back in regard to where we are financially. This will be the first of many shoes that I think will probably fall. Are we positioned as we should be positioned, and can we sustain in any fiscal year? What we see right now will impact the fiscal year that we are in and next year. But should we have another instance or episode like this, are we financially positioned to move that forward and to be in compliance with our balanced budget? Now, I understand, I heard the opinion that we could always go back in and make those adjustments in the coming year on an as-needed basis. But to what degree are we looking at having to pull down on our fund balance, to do anything that we're going to be doing? We voted on some things tonight that some of it was going to be coming from fund balance. So I think that it's a good thing that you raised the issue that you raised last Thursday in regard to this. I think that it's unfortunate that when we could have addressed this, we didn't address it before now. I know that I've asked that this be addressed for the past 4 years. And so we finally get to the point where we're going to address it. And now we have that unforeseen situation. And just one final note, if we go back and we look historically and at instances in our society, we know that every 10 to 15 years, there is an episode, whether it is of a natural disaster or man-made, that causes a downturn in the economy. While I think we're very well positioned right now, we don't know what our position is going to be until we see what the sales tax receipts are going to be coming in. So I think that this is the beginning of an even greater conversation for council to have moving forward in regard to the budget that staff puts before us and how it is funded and how we choose to maintain our reserves moving forward. So I agree with you, Chad. I would not be in favor at this time of having the repairs made to the wall, which is why I asked about our exposure. And if it's a matter that we would be exposed to some degree, it's just like the tree issue. When Bristol, Virginia was not really excited about doing the whole tree project until a major tree limb fell through the sunroof of a car of a person that it was two grandparents and their two grandchildren. They just happened to have gotten out of the car to go eat lunch. If someone had been in the car, it would have been a different story. So I think we have to have a broader look at these issues as they come.
So it sounds like, summarizing that, it sounds like you're suggesting that we might put off any decisions on this till we have a little, maybe put a halt on any work and include it in some more discussions as we move into our budget, and that it wouldn't be the only thing that's included. We're going to have a lot of things to talk about.
Right. I don't have a problem with tabling this complete in its entirety until we have a clear understanding that we do not have the exposure, hidden or known, since this has been put into the public domain and researched. The prudent man rule always applies. And I think that it's not something that we've got to jump into right away.
Let me.
One second, I'll just make a note that we're having discussion prior to motions, which is Robert's rules is what we normally follow, but there's also times when it's good to have discussion and then see if there's consensus for a motion. So just noting. Okay.
If I could, Mayor, I think it's important to note that based on information or based on the actions of City Council in March, the stage has already been ordered. And I'm not sure at what point that's been, I'm not sure in terms of the manufacturer, maybe Terry can speak to that, but that may be hard to reel back in at this point. And Terry probably has some information about that. There are other options that council has here. You could not do the maintenance on the wall and go ahead with your mural. Again, the mural will have a life to it. The current mural has a life to it. And at that point, you can decide at a future date whether there's actions that need to be taken toward maintaining the wall. But the stage has already been ordered. And Terry, I mean, where would we be if that was walked back? And if I understand what council's saying, what are you saying, Councilwoman Powers?
Well, we were talking specifically about the wall bill. I thought I was pretty clear.
But it sounded like we were talking about the whole project.
Well, that was the misunderstanding. I'm talking about the wall and the mural specific. I understand you made that clear last week that the stage had been ordered. So I don't want to put us in a precarious position like that. And that will in fact offset costs to BCM, the Rhythm and Roots Committee specifically. So that's not part of this discussion today. The discussion today is about the wall.
Right. And specifically even the wall maintenance. So,
I get that we can have it painted. Look, as I told Chad when he first mentioned this, I'm not going to fall on the sword on this. I get it. Of course I get it. I'm as fiscally conservative and have made that known throughout. I think that, but my concern is that we have a clear understanding of our liability should anything happen. The situation with the trees was fortunate that no one was in the car. Would have been very unfortunate had someone been in the car. And I just want to be sure that we are on terra firma with this.
Tim, can I ask you also too, you mentioned that you may have some folks on staff that can take a look at some potential mortar joints that can be filled in. And I know what you're saying, that a professional, someone who's in that industry may be able to do a better job. Is that something we want to take a look at to see if that, or have you looked at it closely enough? My understanding is from everything we've talked about this, that there shouldn't be any, that the likelihood is that anything on the wall would not be falling off where it could hurt anyone. But I mean, anything can happen, I'm sure. But do you think we should take a closer look at it to see if we do have someone in our staff that may be able to look at some of those mortar joints and so forth?
Well, we certainly can evaluate, get a closer look at it with some of the staff and get their opinions on any repairs that we may deem necessary. But once again, there's nothing, when mortar gets wet, it deteriorates, powders up and pops out little pieces of mortar. And also the same with the facades on the brick, they'll just ultimately crumble off. So there's not big chunks of brick or mortar falling off the wall right now.
Melanie, you've stayed silent. You got any opinion on this?
Well, I'm just sitting here listening, Chad. I mean, looking at the wall a few times myself, what I've noticed most is that we're not seeing a whole lot more deterioration in that brick than you would normally see in a foundation of your house or on a chimney. So I think back to Tim's point, I think if they do another complete evaluation, and maybe there's some small areas that we can go in and do a little bit on. But I don't see anything right now that seems to be of any serious nature.
Well, the reason that I am going to I'm supposing I can make a motion on this, Danielle, you can correct me or not, but is that we have our summer season coming up, and we have a lot of merchants downtown, and hopefully this is going to subside and where we can have, a lot of our normal activities downtown. And furthermore, we have, a huge event. Well, let me say this, a good 2 weeks of events that'll be happening in the fall. Maybe we can put this off a month to reevaluate. And as Lee said, I'm not going to fall on the sword for this as well. We can hold off and at our next meeting and maybe give our staff time to look at it. I'm just of the opinion that our artist has this in their schedule. I would probably prefer to go ahead, as far as the wall goes, go ahead and make a motion that we eliminate the $93,000 expenditure and go ahead and paint the mural, and also at the same time get Tim and staff to before it's painted, take a good hard look and see if there's any small repairs that need to be made.
So that, Chad, that was a motion that to eliminate the repair of the wall, which was originally 93, but understanding that there's 7,000 whatever that would need to be expended for the expenses currently.
I'd also like to put in there that we, as far as that $3,400 in tools, that of that 7,000, if we can, of those tools, then maybe our staff can use to touch up some of the spots on the wall of having those returned to the city. If we're paying for them, then getting those to our staff to be able to use.
I think that might be better just as a discussion and rather than including in the motion, but certainly for our staff to evaluate whether they can be used. Ms. Kaiser attorney wants to talk to us.
I think what we're effectively doing is repealing a resolution that you passed back in March. You passed resolution 20-17 in the March meeting. So I think the motion needs to be that you would be repealing resolution 20-17 and directing staff to negotiate an end to that bid, basically, to negotiate how the city gets out of that bid and discontinues the work.
That would be
Did
my
that resolution only include the restoration to the wall, or did that resolution, the stage was separate, right?
There were 3 separate
It
resolutions.
was only the wall.
Right.
It's only the wall.
I would ask that in dealing with all of this, that we have in writing from the structural engineer that the wall does not pose imminent danger. So that we've got a written document that will validate what we're doing.
I'm going to keep my
I'm just
motion.
trying
as
to
I
cover our
stated.
rear end. I mean, I'll just be honest. I'm just trying to cover our rear end in the long run.
I'm going to keep the motion as I stated.
Okay, your motion as stated, do you want to, Chad, do you want to add to that it's repealing 20-17?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Vince is second. Now we can officially discuss the motion, which is to repeal the resolution 20-17, which was to repair the wall. And then the discussion includes staff working that out with the details, which they've already gotten some estimates, et cetera, that we've talked about. Further discussion?
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add is that, back when we passed this resolution, we were in totally different times. And obviously, there's decisions that were made then we may have not made today. I think that everyone needs to understand that, we're going to see some hurdles. And we may have to back up and just rethink this whole process of what we have done previously. We're in uncharted waters now. So I think we all just need to remain calm and let's get through this.
Okay, other discussion?
Well, on that note, I'm just trying to maintain my expectations. You've heard me say that. Is my expectation that we will receive a written report clearing the wall realistic, or is that not going to be forthcoming?
I think we could, the document that we already have probably outlines it and may say that in so many words. Trying to get a structural engineer to state unequivocally what you're asking might be unrealistic. So I think we could look back at the structural engineer report and be sure that that is thorough and covers what we're looking at.
Well, if we can't get it to say that specifically, I would ask to at least have the summation for discussion of the report. Just discussion.
Right now, so you asking a question?
No, the next meeting, because Chad's rescinding the resolution. So when we meet again, it's that we have a summation of the structural engineer's report so that we understand that if we vote to do anything differently, we're on solid ground with it.
Okay. Yeah, it'd also be good if the artist could be approached and just say anything on the event of his death, or if he's willing to do anything. If he's not, that's clear and that's normal. But if there's anything that would be agreed to with the artist, so or over a longer period of time or whatever, just to see if there's anything. Not knowing where in 20 years we might want something different, but also we know this is historic, so it's great to have. Any other discussion?
I believe I asked the question when we were voting on this the first time, which I did not vote for, but I think Tim had answered a lot of the questions about the wall, of that there was no imminent danger or anything of that came from that structural engineer. So I believe that I think we're fine there. I don't see that's, but I understand your concern, Lee, that of covering us, and we should, but going back and remembering of asking those specific questions about the wall, I believe there was some, I'm not having the report in front of you, I'm sure you, but I believe it's in that report that would be enough for us to be covered, but we can have that discussion.
Call for the question.
Okay. So much for my discussion. All right. So, Tara.
We're going to
Okay,
want to
sorry.
make sure that a vote of yes is, well, you want to go through that, Danielle, real quick. A vote of yes means that we're rescinding and
A vote of yes means you're voting to repeal Resolution 20-17, so that would no longer have any effect.
okay.
It means the contract to repair the wall would no longer be approved.
Okay. Miss Music.
Okay, thank you. Fire Robin,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Powers,
I'll abstain at this time.
okay, Luttrell,
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
All right. Thank y'all very much. So, and we can have a little bit of follow-up discussion at our next time we're together at an official meeting. Okay, so I think, Mr. Sora, what things did you want to cover? And I think we want to talk about future meetings and and also if you want me to give a little bit about the community response for COVID-19 in a minute.
Mayor, I have no updates. Certainly, Dr. May and Gary Mays gave you COVID-19 update. I can't enhance that, certainly. I think the next item for discussion that you could lead is what would council desire in terms of future meetings, the frequency and the time.
Right. So, yeah, and looking right now, we're scheduled for the 28th for a work session for the budget, which we do not know if we'll be ready to have that workshop or not, but I assume that stays on our calendar. It's been advertised, et cetera. So we have that meeting. And Mr. Sword, what time was it scheduled publicly?
That's it. It's at 10:30 a.m. on the 28th.
Okay. So what I'm thinking is whether we would want to not have a meeting next week, but schedule one the following week, maybe on Tuesday the 21st, or if what we want to try to do is be efficient with our advertising. So, which does cost significant amount of money. So if we can plan ahead and advertise the meetings we think we would like to have. The other is I think that impacts it is what other updates do we want to have? Who do we want to, obviously health department, we do want to hear from periodically. So just because we've heard from somebody does not mean that we don't want to hear from them again, both for us as well as for this being out for the public to hear updates. But so maybe a combined discussion of frequency, but also what kinds of things you might want to have on any updated agenda or workshop type agenda. So far, we have not had a workshop. We've had called meetings, but the format has been more workshop-y type format. So discussion?
I'll ask our staff, what business did we miss in our last work session that I know we had some presentations, but is there anything in our last work session that we may need to, if we were to do an update next week, which I kind of would like to have an update at least one time next week myself, just because I think we're in a critical week for next week. But what other, and I really don't think we need any, if we need an outside someone to come in, Gary or whomever, that we certainly can do that. But my thought was is if we went ahead and did it, scheduled an update, maybe it's midweek, maybe it's Wednesday, we do that, and then schedule any pieces of business that we need to attend to. Bill, what's your thoughts?
Well, from our March work session, we picked up the Believe in Bristol presentation that was originally scheduled there. Another item for the March work session, if you recall, at the February work session, I handed out to you a draft of our Economic Development Incentive Program. And we could have Tom make that presentation. That can be done next week. That could be done on the 21st. It could be done on the 28th for that matter. But those are the things that were out there at that time that we haven't. That the EDIP is the only one we haven't picked up.
Also, we had scheduled comprehensive plan, and we got that in our mail package that was delivered. So whether that's an opportunity in the next few weeks to try to do that, I would think some of these things that if we do it in this format, if we feel like it didn't completely cover or that we need face-to-face discussion, we can still have had the presentation, the biggest part of it. And then when we're back together personally, we could always have a brief summary and then continue discussion face-to-face if we feel like that's critical. And I know some of these things are pretty big things, but anyway, I would think comprehensive plan, we could look at whether that presentation could be done at some point.
If you recall, that was a standalone. That wasn't part of a work session. We felt like that was going to be a long enough presentation and enough detail that it needed to be a dedicated session. Now we can work with the consultant to do a Zoom type meeting if you would like. Just give us some dates, and we'll certainly have to work around a consultant schedule to arrange that.
So I think, so on scheduling these meetings, I think it would be really good if we stick to a similar time. And I think we've done Tuesdays or Thursdays. So if we tried to continue rather than having it on different days, so it would try to see, and if we like the 9 o'clock, try to go for that with our regular meeting on at the 7 p.m. So whether that's opportunity our work session is scheduled for a Tuesday. Right now it's later than these meetings have been scheduled. But anyway, that would be my preference, that we choose a Tuesday or a Thursday for our regular updates. And if we kept them as called meetings, then that means we could do, well, Danielle, correct us. So if we're advertising ahead, do we need to include agendas for all those for called meetings, or can we put that out as a separate, not in that?
Because these are not your regularly scheduled meetings, they're all technically special called meetings. And legally, you do have to put out an agenda. Doesn't necessarily have to be published in a newspaper ad, but
okay.
I guess that if you were not going to take any action, if you were characterizing these as work sessions,
Right.
then we might be able to go in that direction, which means that the agendas, but then you're not voting on anything, because that's how we conduct work sessions. This is non-voting.
Right. Well, the agendas have been published on board docs, much like today, the item that you were voting on was published along with the supplemental documentation to provide you information on that.
Right. Okay.
But the problem with characterizing something as a special called meeting is that our charter requires that we publish a newspaper advertisement before a special called meeting, at least 24 hours in advance. And that becomes expensive, I think.
Right. So that's where if we could combine those, that would help with that expense.
I have a quick question, Margaret.
Yes.
The mayor, the governor, the stay-at-home order is through April 24th. Is that correct?
So April 14th.
April 14th. Okay.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that's just this coming Tuesday. So
Unless it's extended, yes.
Unless it's extended. Okay.
Okay, so what's council's, so Chad said he'd like to meet next week. I would think that would be the 21st or the 23rd if we stuck to a Tuesday or Thursday. Other,
That would be skipping next
That would-
week.
That would
no,
be 15th or the.
oh, sorry, my calendar's too far away. Yeah, the 14th or the 16th. And then again on the 21st or 23rd, if we wanted to advertise both of those, I assume we could always cancel if we had no business or no updates to provide, or we just have a very brief update that's more as much for public as it is for us.
We had said originally we were going to meet on Mondays and Thursdays.
We did.
And so that would be either the 13th or the 16th. And I know y'all are planning on, I assume, renewing the stay at home for this coming week of the 13th. Is that correct?
We renew those every 7 days, consistent with Dr. May's order. We're following his orders. So our declarations are reissued on Monday, and they're posted on our website.
Right. Okay. So, you know, whenever y'all want to meet, just as long, I'd like for us to stick to the Monday, Thursday process. I think Tuesday to Thursday is 2 back-to-back.
Yeah.
Well, I would think we don't need to meet 2 times a week. I would think 1 time a week, unless we have some super emergency.
Right.
I'd propose next
Once a
Thursday.
week.
Next Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the 16th at 9 o'clock.
Mhm.
And do we want to go ahead and say the 23rd at 9 o'clock?
I'm open to that, sure.
I would tentatively say the 20th and the 23rd, realizing to your point, Margaret, that we could cancel the 20th. But as we get a little further out from our peak date, the 17th is supposed to be our peak date. So it might be good to have, just leave the 20th there, knowing that we can cancel it.
Other thoughts? And just the peak date, if that's for Tennessee, Tennessee is on different schedules. So
Right.
We're probably, from what was previously published, we're more like the last week of April. And the models continue to change because the social distancing appears to have an effect. So I would anticipate that we're going to be behind that timing for our part of the state, but we don't know.
So we're still talking about having 2 a week or just getting back to 1?
I would recommend 1, but so that would be the 16th, 23rd, and then the 28th is already advertised.
Well, I guess part of it too is, Margaret, what meetings do you have this week and when are they, or this week, that we could be updated on of what goes on in those, in whatever meetings you're having?
So meetings have really reduced for like regionalism meetings with First Tennessee Development District that was happening, et cetera. So those have not been happening. So for me, the ones that pertain to or of interest, we have the health department on Fridays at 8 a.m. And then and those have gotten less they're less pressured or whatever than they were. And then the other thing, most of the time it's on Thursdays at 11 for our community update. That's the different community services providing an update for and what are the needs seen. Other than that, I can't think of other meetings I'm having that are because of being made.
Okay, then it doesn't matter. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
No.
So would Monday be a better day than Thursday, since you've got Thursday with social services and Friday with the health department? Then we're just updated on Mondays and then we take off for the week. Just thinking out loud.
That'd be fine with me.
If you do that, do you want to be updated this coming Monday? Because basically we're going to be out of the office for the next 3 days.
Yeah, it's a holiday.
I don't.
So Monday would not be a good day to.
Well, Monday wouldn't be necessary this next week. We could do the Thursday, and then after this next Thursday, the 6th, whatever it is, the 16th, then we could start in on Mondays.
So the 16th, the 20th, and the 28th.
Correct. That'd be
Okay.
whatever everybody wants to do.
Is
I
that
just think
good?
it's
I'm fine with that.
I'm good with that as well.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So, so we're talking about business. Bill, do you see any future business that's going to need to be conducted? Well, I guess we kind of talked about, the only thing that I was thinking about on our prior schedule, it seemed like that we were supposed to be getting an update from Discover Bristol that I think was going to include our state tourism folks. Is that correct? And I think we've canceled.
I haven't heard anything from Beth really since we started moving into the more significant phase of the COVID-19. I know on the very early end, the dates in April were problematic for the tourism official from the state of Tennessee from a budgetary standpoint. Since that time, it's become problematic for a lot of reasons. But there may well be opportunity as since those discussions, everyone has embraced the Zoom technology and that type of format. There may be opportunity to have them at one of these next two meetings, either the 16th or 20th, or possibly even the 28th. You know, again, we're trying to get as much as Councilwoman Powers mentioned. We're trying to, like every city and states for that matter. And I've sent you all information from governing and different sources about the challenges that municipalities have right now in trying to predict revenue streams for next year. So I'm not sure what the 28th is going to look like from a budgetary standpoint, quite frankly. But we can work. We could have that speaker on one of those dates. I'll work with Beth to see if they're available on one of those dates to have a presentation. We may have some other issues that will come before you, but they're still in flux right now.
I think there's a planning commission is going to figure out how to meet. I think there's one issue that's timely, maybe that I can't remember, but heard that discussion. So there's
a special use permit application that the PC will need to deal with. Yes, ma'am.
Right. And that does not come to council, special use permit.
No, it does not.
And Chad, to your point, something to keep in mind with Discover Bristol is how off-footed our occupancy tax is going to be. Because, you know, we've called the race and it's delayed. And so, you know, it just is what it is.
I think it kind of does pertain to what you were saying before about how we move forward. And that is a significant amount of money that my view would be that we go ahead and get the presentation from Discover Bristol and try to include their, the state folks as well in their presentation. And, anything else that's coming up like that as well, Bill, that you're thinking about. I mean, I think somewhat of what you were saying, Lee, was that what comes after this?
Right.
And, nobody can say for sure, but we can estimate that with things nationally starting to slow, that, we can start seeing a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and that we probably need to be, as a city, starting to put together a plan of how we move forward. The main thing I was trying to get out was that we could, if I know we all have work to do and different things that we must take care of, but the question is, can we get a 10 or 15 minute update? We're all getting written updates on a daily basis. The public may not be getting those, but on TV, I mean, Ballard's on there about every day. So I think our public's pretty well getting all the information. But my thought is if we have a 5 or 10 minute update and then we move to a piece of business, and maybe we try to keep our once a week or twice a week updates to an hour, and try to get a piece of business in there as well.
I'd like to, Lee, you had said you had talked to the comptroller as far as what the appetite is. Is there any update from the state of extending our budget deadline? What is what's
based on the conversation that I had? It's that, they're monitoring what's happening across the state. We're a very elongated state, so with Davidson County, they're in one situation. Sumner, Wilson, and Williamson right there. Shelby County, of course, Hamilton County, Knox County, and then our area. And they realize that there is a loss of sales tax revenue on everyone's part, and they realize that everyone is in budget season right now. They have not made a determination from their perspective right now. The date is the date, and as I said and reiterated, I think we're all of the opinion that we're good stewards, and we would certainly want to comply with the dates as they are, but that they are very well aware of what the situation is and what our sales tax revenue does. We are, and this is nothing that makes anybody happy. Most of all, it makes me very not unhappy, but very saddened, is that our revenues as a city are driven off of sales tax, and we are going to be experiencing a loss of sales tax. It may be a slow build back to where we are. I think it will be. I think we'll get back to where we are, but for the time being and for the year moving forward, it's going to be a challenge. Bill sent out an article yesterday that I think falls in line with some of the conversation that I had. If you look almost down 3/4 of the way through that, it talks about how we're going to go into a different mindset, and we may have to go back and look at our property tax evaluations. My understanding in talking with the county is that our property tax evaluations may go up this year as far as their values. That we were in the past have been hovering around 80% of what the value actually was. They're hoping to bring that in line this year with 100% of evaluation. So there's the thought, and I'm sure that as Mr. Sword gets into this even more, there's the thought that the increase of the valuation in property values could to some degree offset minimally the loss of sales tax revenues. And so I did ask the question. It was not one that I wanted to ask, but do we have to wait for the state to recertify our tax rate to make any adjustments to perhaps restore the tax rate where it previously was? And the answer to that was no, that we can do that at any time if we see the need for those increased revenues. I'm not suggesting any of that, but Vince, that was pretty much the sum total of the conversation.
So they haven't made a decision on whether they're going to extend our deadline for?
The answer to that would be no.
Okay.
So, okay. Yeah, so I think, and Mr. Soar, on the comprehensive plan, I think the problem before was a lot of people out of town at different times. I think we have a captive audience. I would think comprehensive plan sometime in, if not one of these scheduled dates to have an extended presentation, then May, a Monday or a Thursday at 9. It sounded like a pretty good time for most everybody. So I would think if you can figure out what works well for the folks in Asheville, that we have probably better opportunity to fit some of these things in than we do during normal times, since we've reduced out-of-town travel and also quite as many engagements. So, and you can let us know how long we need to put aside, if it's a anticipated 2.5, 3 hour, whatever, for that presentation. But I would think that would
probably presentation and question and answering, I would set aside probably what we spent this morning. I think we've been on now about 1 hour and 35. I would say that's probably what we would want to commit to the comprehensive plan.
Right. All right. So, and I've got 11 o'clock community response meeting that's today because usually it's Friday, but tomorrow is still a holiday for a few people that aren't working in direct response. I think people were going to give an update from BTS with hotspots, and I guess I know Lee has information, but Vince, do you have information as a person or serving on BTS board?
It is being worked on as we speak, and I haven't spoken to them this morning but they have a plan together and are working on getting those.
Okay. All right. Lee, do you have more? And I talked briefly to Michael Parker this morning. He called with an update. So
last week when it was made known that, and previous to that, Margaret, you've talked about that, Vince has talked about as well, that there were spots and families that didn't have the internet connectivity to do the schoolwork. Reached out to April Eads, and I know Vince, as a board member, you've been working on this, but they've established the BTS COVID-19 Relief Project during this state of emergency. One home per student per family, one home that has, they may have multiple students. They're going to provide 100 megs internet full speed directly connected to the router, which will give them 40 to 50 megabytes. The start date will be announced. They're working those details out. It has the potential to extend for 90 days from declared state of emergency. The start date is still in flux. Dr. Annette Tudor will serve as the contact with the school system, and at the end of the term, at the end of the 90 days, the different families will be given the opportunity to convert at the current rate to a continued use, or it will be made known 30 days prior to the end date, tentatively set around July 1st, that within 30 days, they will either come online, they can downgrade it, or they can disconnect altogether. A point in regard to wireless hotspots, the downtown wireless hotspot has in the past required an account number to use that hotspot. It has now been opened up to the general public, as well as the parking lot between BTS and Avoca Elementary School. So they, once again, and Vince, you're to be commended for all of the work that you've been doing with BTS. I know that you've played a role in this as well. They've come through for us tremendously, as they always do, and just greatly appreciate Vince's work in all of this, as well as BTS.
Okay. Anybody have anything else to add on BTS? Is other updates? If people wanted just a quick review for community, in our community, things related with food, the Bristol Food Pantry which is by First Baptist Church. It is open from 1 to 3, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They are also very glad to welcome volunteers to hand out the food, as well as those to help pack the food. The schools we heard from Dr. Tudor last week, they're just doing a tremendous job with meals. Also started getting that weekend food that they had with the backpack program. They also have food boxes put together by Second Harvest Food Bank to provide to different families. And for Second Harvest and First Tennessee Development District have received monies that are helping with these different things. We also have the Soup Kitchen, which is United Company. It began in Bristol, Virginia. It has expanded prior to now to Bristol, Tennessee, and I think they're still accepting new areas to deliver. They're still doing Monday through Friday. They do a little bowl of soup and crackers to various sites. Meals on Wheels continues, and I think that's where First Tennessee Development District was looking at funding to try to reach everybody who is on a wait list, because there's significant wait lists for that program normally. The other thing that has happened is Haven Arrest. received a large donation to, and I know Second Harvest was doing the same model. I don't know if they've started it, but working with various restaurants to cook food that they are providing from Sunday through Friday evenings at 5 o'clock at the corner of Anderson and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And that is open to anyone in our community who wishes to have a meal there. And they are doing it as takeout. Salvation Army also is still serving the folks that stay at Salvation Army. And I think Haven Arrest is still, if folks want to volunteer with Haven, they welcome that as well. The other on healthcare, Crossroads Medical, which is a mobile unit, is still operating as they usually do. And using appropriate protective gear, etc. Also, Healing Hands, that there's been quite a bit of publicity on, is operating with emergencies, including their still offering emergency service. So, and again, following the specific protocol for healthcare workers. And I think those are some of the, First Baptist Church has installed a charging station that some of our folks have, that haven't had outlets regularly in the past might have used the library or some other places that are not currently available. So First Baptist has a charging station. They've got security cameras there, but they welcome people to plug in and take advantage of that charging station. So any questions?
Has there been any talk in your meetings on when we're going back to the homeless situation of if there is a outbreak within the homeless population that we have, of how to handle that? Or
so currently I am not aware of any positive or sick folks in the Bristol homeless population. And the group that's meeting this afternoon at 2, that Terry Napier has been part of, as well as Christina Blevins, along with United Way, that's where we had gotten pretty far along on figuring out how to help our homeless, but we are focused to be sure that we have the right plan to be able to isolate be able to test more and also isolate any positives. So that planning process is happening right now. Also, I'll say that I'm on a statewide task force that is, I think it's meeting this afternoon also. It's pretty heavy duty. It's more focused on our metro areas for what their needs are, but they are trying to make recommendations to from the state level. From what I understand in conversations with our health department and others, we're about the same as other communities across our state for the planning process and solutions to be determined. So does that help answer your question?
yeah, I guess so. So there is a plan being worked on as we speak, correct?
For isolate, yes, to have, so that if someone does test positive, there's opportunities to isolate that person from the community and monitor till they are symptom free. Yes.
So I guess once that's finalized, you'll send us what that is going to be.
Yeah, that's not Terry Napier, and it looks like he unmuted his microphone, so he could add to this if that would be helpful.
So yeah, right now the plan is, obviously isolation is the first step. Haven of Rest has a house that is unoccupied that could probably house 5 or 6. And I will note that right now there is not a capacity issue for homeless at either of our shelters. 2 days ago when I talked to Salvation Army, they only had 5 people the night before. So right now there is not a capacity problem. So what we're focusing on is, if things get, peak as bad as they possibly could, what would we do with a homeless person that is infected? So we have some capacity at the Haven. We're looking at possible capacity at a hotel for some, so these are people who are not breathing compromised, who have tested positive or major symptoms, but do not have a breathing issue because they would be in the hospital. So
Right.
this is just a quarantine.
Right.
And so that's the two steps. And then the third step is there's a group that's looking at the nursing home out on the hill at the old hospital as a possible quarantine / treatment area. Again, worst case scenario. And the model that first started this, Knoxville and Nashville saw a huge influx of homeless folks when this started. It looks like a lot of those fled New York and that area. We haven't seen that. In fact, I've gone down, kind of watched the bus, and we get a couple new ones here and there, but it doesn't look like our population has grown. In fact, it looks like our population has decreased. We also have another plan in place, and these are worst case scenario plans. We've worked with Earhart Campground to use their shower house and restroom facility. And I've made arrangements for a couple tents if we need to use that as a feeding site. So we have 2 or 3 contingency plans that we're working on, worst case scenario plans for our community only. These are not regional plans. These are for our community should we need to stand those up. Right now, we do not need to do any of that. We do not have a capacity issue. And the rumor about the sick person, that was on Facebook. Both Bristol, Virginia and Bristol, Tennessee, fire medics ran on that person. She was taken to Johnson Memorial, and Mike Carrier, Chief Carrier, is in contact and was going to be notified if she did test positive. What we understand is she may have been held for some period of time over blood pressure and other issues, but the last time I talked to Carrier, there was not a positive on that. So we're not aware of anybody in our population that has been stricken with this to this point.
Great, thank you.
All right. If that's, are we good? I've got to go start my next meeting. So, any other comments or anything?
Good job, everybody. And I would just encourage us to look for the opportunities as well as the helpers.
The good job. So, okay. Thank you very much. And so we will be back together again on the 16th and work on getting that schedule publicized. So, all right. Thank y'all very much. And we're adjourned.
Have a good day.
Bye.